The great chamber of the Scifi hegemony was not merely an architectural marvel. It was a testament to galactic dominion, a colossal expanse carved from a single, moon-sized asteroid, its interior shimmering with the refracted starlight captured by crystalline facets embedded within its very fabric. Thousands of sentient beings from countless client species, representing myriad worlds and allegiances, occupied the tiered viewing platforms that spiraled upwards into the cavernous void above. Their collective hum of anticipation, a low, vibrating drone that resonated through the very bones of the primary Scifi counselors seated at the central holotable. The air, meticulously calibrated to suit a dozen distinct atmospheric requirements, carried the faint, metallic tang of ionized particles, a signature of the hegemony's advanced environmental controls. Before the council, suspended in the chamber's heart, hovered a three-dimensional projection of a nascent star system, its infant sun a pulsating crimson jewel, orbited by a nascent network of charted hyperspatial conduits. Pathways the Scifi considered their own by ancient decree and recent territorial expansion. But the gaze of the primary Scifi arbiter, High Chancellor Vorlax, a creature of immense, obsidian carapace and 6 articulating limbs, was not fixed on the system's nascent potential for exploitation. It was fixed on a minuscule, almost imperceptible blip, an intruder's ghost, tracing an impossibly deliberate trajectory through the farthest, most desolate reaches of the projection. Vorlax's primary ocular cluster, a multifaceted orb that absorbed and processed light with startling efficiency, narrowed almost imperceptibly as he contemplated the anomaly. The designation humanity remains a curiosity, a paradox of the void. His voice, a resonant rumble amplified by the chamber's acoustics, vibrated through the silent assembly. Their presence in the periphery has thus far been minimal. Their vessels, by our calculations, lack the offensive capability to pose a credible threat to even a single patrol frigate, let alone a hegemonic blockade. Yet their persistence, their inexplicable drive into territories devoid of resource potential, into regions long abandoned even by the most desperate prospectors, remains an enigma. This particular vessel, a Pathfinder class designated Icarus by their rudimentary nomenclature, is perhaps the most bewildering. It possesses no significant weaponry, minimal shielding beyond standard atmospheric reentry plating, and a propulsion system optimized for endurance, not speed or power. By all conventional metrics, it is demonstrably the weakest ship in their observed fleet. A mere whisper in the void, yet its trajectory is what concerns me. Beside him, Counselor Jainari, a graceful bipedal being whose skin shimmered with a delicate bioluminescence in response to fluctuations in ambient energy, extended a slender digit towards the holographic projection. Her species, known for their diplomatic acumen and deep historical archives, often served as the hegemony's conscience. High Chancellor, the Icarus has deviated from all previously observed human deep space survey routes. It is now entering the designated Forbidden Void, a region whose properties defy conventional astrophysical explanation and whose historical records among the precursor civilizations speak of profound disquiet. It is a sector where the fabric of spacetime itself seems to fray, where sensor echoes return fragmented and distorted, and where the great silence reigns absolute. Jainari's voice, a melodic series of chimes and modulated clicks, held a tremor of ancient fear, a cultural echo of millennia spent respecting the inexplicable boundaries of the cosmos. The great silence was not merely an absence of life, but an absence of anything comprehensible beyond a certain cosmological horizon, a region that swallowed light and thought alike, a cosmic maw that defied all attempts at charting or analysis. Even the Scifi, with their unparalleled mastery of stellar cartography, recoiled from its nebulous edge. A ripple of unease spread through the tiered assembly. The Forbidden Void was not a territory to be discussed lightly, nor to be entered without consequence. For a species as nascent and seemingly ill-equipped as humanity to venture there, even with their weakest ship, was an act of either supreme arrogance, profound ignorance, or something far more unsettling. From a lower tier, a heavily armored Katar warlord, General Grok, whose species boasted a formidable military record, shifted his massive frame, his guttural growl cutting through the subtle whispers. High Chancellor, with all due respect to the diplomat's caution, this is either a deliberate probe, an act of veiled aggression disguised by feigned weakness, or a catastrophic navigational error. In either case, it cannot be tolerated. Our hegemony is not defined by its tolerance for incursions into sacred or dangerous space. A single Qatar destroyer could vaporize that insignificant vessel before it breached the outer anomalies. We should dispatch a deterrent, a clear message. Grok's segmented eyes, like polished facets of ruby, glowed with an impatient ferocity, a reflection of his species' direct and militaristic approach to galactic relations. Vorlax turned his primary ocular cluster slowly towards Grok, the gesture conveying a depth of consideration that belied the Scifi's seemingly ponderous movements. "General, your counsel is noted. The expediency of your proposed solution is undeniable. However, humanity has consistently defied our predictive models. They do not fit the established threat profile of an aggressive expansionist, nor do they behave like a species driven solely by resource acquisition. Their movements have been methodical, their communications sparse but surprisingly consistent in their self-proclaimed goals of exploration and understanding. To respond with overt force to such an ambiguous incursion, especially by a vessel so demonstrably non-threatening, risks revealing the full extent of our anxieties regarding the Forbidden Void, anxieties we have carefully cultivated for millennia to discourage any species from probing its depths." The Chancellor's voice dipped, laden with a historical weight that silenced even Grok. What if their weakness is a calculated gambit designed to provoke a reaction, to elicit data on our defenses, our responses? Or worse, what if their ignorance is merely a facade for a deeper understanding of phenomena we ourselves cannot grasp? Their technology, though disparate, has moments of inexplicable advancement, particularly in quantum entanglement communication and localized gravimetric manipulation, which we have thus far failed to replicate with stability. Jainari chimed in again, her bioluminescence dimming slightly, a sign of her contemplative state. "Chancellor, the Qatar assessment of the Icarus is based purely on observed offensive and defensive metrics. But what if its purpose is not to fight, nor to defend, but to perceive? What if its weakness is a design philosophy, a commitment to a singular, non-combative function that, from their perspective, is not weak at all, but highly optimized?" She paused, allowing the gravity of her unspoken thought to settle in the silent chamber. What if they are not seeking to penetrate the forbidden void with force, but with observation? To listen to the great silence, where we, for generations, have only felt dread. The implications of Jainari's question hung heavy in the air, stirring ancient memories of civilizations that had vanished into the unknown, of warnings etched in stellar dust. The Scifi hegemony had risen to prominence by meticulously cataloging and mastering the known universe, but the Forbidden Void remained its most profound and terrifying blind spot, a cosmic lacuna at the very edge of their understanding. To have a new, unproven species, with a vessel considered utterly insignificant by Scifi standards, deliberately trespass into this forbidden zone, was an affront not just to their territorial claims, but to their very intellectual superiority. Vorlax considered this for a long moment, the faceted lenses of his primary ocular cluster swiveling, absorbing the hushed, anxious energy of the chamber. Diplomat Jainari raises a compelling point. A direct military confrontation, particularly if the Icarus is indeed as strategically insignificant as it appears, would be an inefficient expenditure of resources and would yield little new intelligence. It is imperative that we understand the true intent behind humanity's brazenness. Therefore, a compromise. General Grok, you will dispatch a reconnaissance fleet to the immediate vicinity of the Icarus, not for engagement but for observation. Maintain maximum stealth protocols. Monitor their every fluctuation, their every communication. We must ascertain what drives this species, what compels them to send their weakest vessel into the very maw of the Great Silence. The Chancellor's gaze returned to the diminutive blip on the projection, now nearing the shimmering, distorting boundary of the Forbidden Void. We shall observe, and we shall learn. The true measure of a species is often revealed not in its power, but in its understanding of weakness, both its own and that of others. Days blurred into an agonizingly protracted watch within the Scifi Council chamber, the holographic projection of the Icarus, and its relentless trajectory into the Forbidden Void becoming an obsessive focal point for every counselor. The reconnaissance fleet, a silent armada of Scifi patrol vessels and stealth frigates commanded by the stoic Admiral Kale, had positioned itself at the periphery of the anomalous zone, their advanced sensors straining to pierce the growing atmospheric and spatial distortions that emanated from the VO. Id Kale's reports, relayed in real time to the hegemony, spoke of increasing sensor interference, gravitational fluctuations, and strange, high-frequency energy echoes that defied classification. Yet the Icarus persisted, its tiny blip unwavering, its internal energy signatures remaining constant, almost defiantly serene. Vorlax, his immense form rooted to his command throne, absorbed each incoming data stream, his internal processors whirring with intricate calculations and cross-referenced historical data. The Qatar General Grok continued to advocate for an immediate, decisive intervention, fearing that the hegemony's perceived inaction would project an image of weakness. "Chancellor, the human vessel is now deep within the primary distortion field," Grok rumbled, his voice laced with frustration. "Our reconnaissance fleet is struggling to maintain a coherent sensor lock. What if this is a deliberate strategy to mask a larger, more aggressive maneuver? What if their weakness is a feint, a Trojan stratagem?" Jainari, however, remained resolute in her counsel of caution. "General, if it were a feint, a Trojan maneuver, would they not deploy a vessel with some semblance of offensive capability, some hidden weapon signature? The Icarus still registers as inert, its energy output consistent with minimal life support and long-range sensor activation. No weapon systems, no shield harmonics beyond a localized gravplating for micrometeoroid deflection. It is designed for one thing, long-duration, low-profile observation. Its very design speaks of a species dedicated to passive information gathering." Her bioluminescence pulsed gently, reflecting her deepening conviction. "I believe their weakness is merely our inability to perceive purpose beyond conflict. They are navigating an environment we deem hostile, not with force, but with an unparalleled dedication to pure inquiry." As if to punctuate her words, Admiral Kale's voice, usually crisp and unemotional, crackled through the chamber's primary comms channel, tinged with an unfamiliar note of professional bewilderment. "High Chancellor, the Icarus is activating an unknown system. Energy signatures are unprecedented, not weaponized, not propulsion. It's a localized space-time distortion, but it's not for travel. It appears to be an enhancement. Its sensor array is now radiating frequencies we cannot categorize, processing data at an exponential rate. Our own long-range sensors are being overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of the data torrent they are now generating. It's as if their small vessel is creating a window into a reality we cannot perceive." A stunned silence fell upon the chamber. A window into reality. The phrasing hung heavy, echoing the ancient anxieties surrounding the forbidden void. Vorlax, his multifaceted eyes now fixed on the Icarus's blip, felt a cold tendril of something akin to existential dread coil within his segmented form. He had always believed the Scifi understood the fundamental physics of the universe. Their empires spanned vast swathes of the cosmos, built on a meticulous understanding of energy, matter, and spacetime. But if a human vessel, a mere Pathfinder class, could generate a localized spacetime distortion for observational enhancement, then their entire understanding of what was possible, what was real, was fundamentally flawed. "Admiral Kale," Vorlax commanded, his voice a low, steady rumble, "attempt to establish direct communication with the Icarus. Use standard hegemonic diplomatic protocols. Demand their intent. Request their immediate withdrawal, but do not initiate hostilities." On the bridge of the Scifi command vessel, the unwavering resolve, Admiral Kale watched the sensor readouts with an almost ritualistic focus. The Icarus, no more than a speck against the swirling, iridescent chaos of the Forbidden Void's outer edge, was now glowing with a soft, internal light, its diminutive frame humming with an energy signature that defied all known power curves for a vessel of its size. Around it, the very fabric of space seemed to ripple, not violently, but with a strange, almost serene distortion like water around a perfectly smooth stone. "Hail them," Kale ordered, his voice flat, devoid of the surprise that gripped his bridge crew. "Primary diplomatic channel open." A moment later, a calm, clear voice, remarkably unaccented and devoid of any discernible fear or aggression, filled the unwavering resolve's bridge. "This is Pathfinder-class vessel Icarus, Human Exploration Authority, responding to hegemonic hail. We acknowledge your presence, Admiral Kale, and the positioning of your fleet. We appreciate your restraint." Kale's primary sensor operator, a multi-limbed creature named Xyler, recoiled slightly, its optical stalks retracting. "Admiral, they know your designation. They knew we were here. Our stealth protocols are impeccable." Kale merely raised a hand, silencing Xyler, the human voice on the sea. Oms continued, a testament to an unnerving composure. "We understand our current position may appear unconventional, even concerning, given the historical and cultural significance of this region to your hegemony. However, our presence here is purely for scientific inquiry. We are not engaged in territorial claims, resource prospecting, or military reconnaissance against your hegemony. Kale initiated the standard diplomatic response, his voice carefully modulated. Pathfinder Icarus, you have trespassed into a forbidden sector, a region designated by the Scifi hegemony as non-navigable and of extreme hazardous potential. Your presence here constitutes a direct violation of established Void Lane protocols. We demand your immediate withdrawal and a full explanation of your intentions. There was a brief, almost imperceptible pause on the human end, then the voice returned, maintaining its serene tenor. Admiral, we respectfully decline to withdraw. The data we are currently acquiring is of monumental significance, not only to human understanding, but we believe to all sentient life within this galaxy. The hazardous potential you refer to is precisely what we are attempting to comprehend. Our purpose is to observe a phenomenon, an energy signature emanating from what you term the Great Silence, a resonance we have tracked across untold parsecs, and whose origin points to a source beyond known cosmological boundaries. The word struck Kale with the force of an unexpected grav spike. Beyond known cosmological boundaries. It was a concept so audacious, so profound, that it almost defied belief. Pathfinder Icarus, Kale responded, a hint of something beyond mere diplomacy entering his tone. Your claims are extraordinary. Our hegemony's sensors, the most advanced in this sector, detect only incoherent energy and spatial distortions from that region. What energy signature do you claim to be observing? What source are you referring to? Again, that brief, almost imperceptible human pause. Admiral, your conventional sensor suites, while formidable for mapping and localized analysis, are designed to perceive the universe within specific, established parameters. Our Pathfinder-class vessels, though externally appearing weak or lacking in overt power, are specialized platforms. The localized space-time distortion field we are generating allows our quantum entanglement sensor arrays to bypass the conventional limitations of light-speed observation, effectively allowing us to perceive distortions within the fabric of reality that are otherwise obscured by what you experience as the Great Silence. It is not an absence of information, Admiral, but a surfeit, too complex and too subtle for standard perception. The implication was chilling. The Scifi, with their vast empires and technological might, were effectively blind to a fundamental aspect of reality that these nascent humans in their weakest ship could perceive. It wasn't just a technological gap. It was a conceptual chasm. Kale's gaze flickered to the Icarus on his main view screen, its soft glow now seeming less serene and more profound. This was not a military threat. This was an existential challenge. This was humanity, not with cannons and shields, but with the audacity of pure, unadulterated curiosity, armed with a perception that dared to peer into the voids where the Scifi had only seen the end of all things. Back in the Great Chamber, the live feed from the unwavering resolve played the exchange for the horrified counselors. General Grock's segmented eyes were wide with a new kind of dread, his previous bluster replaced by a deep, guttural intake of breath. Their sensors can pierce the Great Silence. They can see what we cannot. His voice, usually booming, was a strained whisper. Vorlax, however, maintained a stoic facade, though internally his philosophical frameworks were crumbling. Jainari's bioluminescence shimmered with an almost frantic energy, her form leaning forward, transfixed by the human voice. High Chancellor, this changes everything. The Great Silence was not a boundary of nothingness, but a veil, and humanity with its weakest ship has peered beyond it. The human voice, calm and steady, returned to the comms channel. Admiral, with your permission, we can share a limited, compressed data burst. It will be challenging for your systems to process, but it may offer a rudimentary glimpse of what we are observing. We believe it is vital for you to understand the true nature of this region and the potential implications for all sentient life. Vorlax made a swift, almost impulsive decision, overriding standard hegemonic security protocols. Admiral Kale, accept the data burst. Immediately, divert all available processing power to its analysis, and maintain an open channel with the Icarus. The moment the data stream began to flow from the Icarus to the unwavering resolve, and subsequently into the Hejim. Nye's central processing core, the Great Chamber was plunged into a dizzying maelstrom of information. The holographic projection of the Icarus vanished, replaced by a torrent of raw, incomprehensible data, a chaotic mosaic of undulating waveforms, impossible geometries, and energy signatures that defied known physics. Scifi systems screamed in protest, their sophisticated processors struggling to find anchors to impose order on the chaos. Console operators on the unwavering resolve reeled, their optical sensors overloading, their multispectral display units flashing with error warnings. Then slowly, agonizingly, the hegemony's central AI, a vast intelligence cultivated over millennia, began to parse the stream, translating the raw data into visual and auditory representations comprehensible to the Scifi. What emerged was not a conventional image, but a sensory experience that transcended sight and sound. It was the echo of an impossibly ancient, incredibly vast structure, not built of matter or energy, but of fabric, a shimmering, fluctuating curtain woven from dark energy and exotic matter, spanning light years, stretching beyond the perceived edge of the galaxy into the cosmic abyss. And from this impossible construct, a resonance of vibration emanated, a signal so complex, so mathematically dense, that it contained information equivalent to the entire historical archives of a galactic cluster, condensed into a single, continuous pulse. It was a language of pure mathematics, a whisper from the very foundation of existence. The great silence was not silent. It was a cosmic curtain, vibrating with an ancient, ongoing message. Though the great silence, it is a shield, Jainari whispered, her bioluminescence flaring with a terror that transcended fear. An artificial construct, it is not empty, it is veiled. General Grok, for the first time in his formidable career, was utterly speechless, his massive frame trembling with the sheer incomprehensibility of what they were witnessing. The martial arrogance that had defined his species for millennia crumbled in the face of this revelation. Their understanding of the universe, their very concept of scale and power, had been shattered by a data stream from a human vessel they had dismissed as insignificant. On the comms, the human voice from the Icarus returned, its calm demeanor now a source of chilling reassurance. High Chancellor Vorlax, Admiral Kale, what you are perceiving is a rudimentary rendering of a transgalactic construct, a phenomenon we have designated the Veil of Ages. It is not a natural formation. Its purpose, we believe, is to contain or to conceal something of unimaginable scale, and the signal emanating from within, it is not a random emanation. It is a continuous directed data pulse, a message. We have been attempting to decode it for some time. We believe it is a warning or perhaps a summons. Vorlax, his complex physiology struggling to process the implications, finally spoke, his voice hoarse, stripped of its usual hegemonic authority. A summons to what? A warning of what? The Veil of Ages, the human voice continued, unfazed, has exhibited increasing instability over the last few local cycles. Its dark energy field is weakening. The signal within it has also begun to change in frequency and intensity. We believe this indicates an imminent event. The veil is failing, High Chancellor, and whatever it has concealed for eons is about to be revealed. The implications slammed into the Scifi Council with the force of a supernova. The great silence, the terrifying, inexplicable void that had dictated their cautious expansion for generations, was not an immutable cosmic boundary, but a failing artificial construct. And humanity, with its seemingly weakest ship, had not only pierced it with perception, but had delivered the most profound and terrifying news the galaxy had ever heard. The universe, as they knew it, was not what they thought it was. It was a revelation that broke every established paradigm, every scientific certainty, every philosophical foundation. Vorlax slowly rose from his command throne, his immense form radiating an almost palpable energy of profound shock and reluctant awe. His primary ocular cluster fixed on the churning, impossible energies now projected in the Great Chamber, a visceral representation of the Veil of Ages. The Qatar warlord, General Grok, remained utterly still, his earlier demands for military intervention replaced by an unnerving silence, his ruby eyes wide and unblinking. Jainari, however, finally found her voice, a new, almost reverent quality to her melodic chimes. The Icarus humanity they did not seek to conquer or destroy, they sought to understand. They saw not a void of terror, but a mystery, and they sent their most dedicated vessel, their most specialized instrument, into the very heart of it, a ship we deemed weak because it carried no weapons but which possess. Had the true power to perceive what was hidden. Vorlax's resonant voice, though still tinged with the reverberations of cosmic dread, began to regain its authority, now infused with a new, profound gravity. Humans, a species whose concept of strength diverges so fundamentally from our own. We measure power and destructive capability in the ability to impose will through force. They measure it in the capacity to discern truth, to unravel the universe's most profound secrets, even at unimaginable personal risk. And they sent their weakest ship to do it, because its lack of destructive power allowed it to focus entirely on observation, on perception. Its apparent vulnerability was its ultimate strength. He extended one of his 6 limbs towards the projected chaos, his gaze sweeping over the counselors, lingering on the stunned faces of the Qatar and the awestruck expressions of the client species. We have been blind, not by lack of technology, but by a lack of perspective. By a fear that precluded true inquiry. Humanity has demonstrated a courage not of brute force, but of intellect, of spirit, that we, in our arrogance, failed to comprehend. The Scifi hegemony, in its long history of expansion and subjugation, had never encountered a species quite like humanity. Their initial assessment had been rooted in a fundamental misinterpretation of their drives and capabilities. They had seen a nascent species, with a disparate fleet, some vessels appearing advanced, others surprisingly rudimentary, and the Icarus at the bottom of that scale. They had mistaken a specialized, highly optimized scientific explorer for a militarily insignificant scout. The philosophical implications were immense. What other assumptions had they made that were equally flawed? What other truths were hidden from their hegemonic gaze? Vorlax's primary ocular cluster turned towards the channel, the human voice from the Icarus still patiently awaiting a response. "Pathfinder Icarus," he rumbled, his voice now imbued with a newfound respect. "The Scifi hegemony is prepared to listen. We are prepared to offer our full resources to assist in the analysis of this veil of ages and the signal it contains. We formally request your guidance, your data, and your expertise. Our initial assessments of your species were incomplete. It is clear now that humanity possesses a wisdom, a drive, and a unique form of strength that we have, until this moment, tragically underestimated. The universe, as we understood it, has indeed been broken. And perhaps it is only through this shattering of perception that we can hope to comprehend the true challenges, and perhaps the true wonders that lie beyond." The great chamber, still reeling from the cosmic implications, began to hum with a different kind of energy, no longer one of fear or territorial dispute, but of profound, shared revelation. The human voice on the comms, always calm, always professional, responded, "High Chancellor, we accept your offer of cooperation. The urgency of this situation demands a unified approach. We have already initiated a preliminary translation of the signal's core message. It appears to be a multi-layered linguistic construct, incredibly ancient but with a recurring theme. A call, a warning, and a location." As the Icarus, the fleet's weakest ship, continued to transmit its unprecedented data, the first coherent translated phrase appeared on the hegemony's central display, raw and stark against the churning chaos of the Veil of Ages. It was a single, universally understandable concept, translated across countless alien languages and human dialects, yet still resonating with an incomprehensible weight. Awakening. The meaning was ambiguous, terrifying, and awe-inspiring all at once. An awakening of what? The ancient entity within the veil, or an awakening for those who received the signal? Humanity, with its weakest ship, had not just revealed a cosmic truth. They had initiated a galactic shift, an unprecedented alliance, forcing the universe to confront a reality far grander and more perilous than any species had ever imagined. The future was no longer about conflict or dominion, but about unity, survival, and the profound, terrifying unknown that humanity, in its quiet, unassuming way, had just unveiled.